You think manipulators pick people at random, like a predator scanning a field, looking for the weakest animal. But that's not what's happening. They don't look for weakness. They look for patterns that don't look like weakness but give them far more control. They look for very specific, high-value patterns. And once they see them, the decision to target you is already made. Before you speak, and before actually you do anything, the selection is already done. In the next 10 minutes, I'm going to show you the 3 invisible markers that put you on their radar. Most people try to defend themselves after the trap is set. I'm going to show you how to become invisible to the trap entirely. If you've ever felt like you attract the wrong people, the wrong boss, the wrong partner, the wrong friend, this isn't bad luck. It's a selection logic you don't even know you're participating in. Let's look at why they chose you, and once you see this, you won't be able to unsee it. Here's how it starts. It's not dramatic. It's almost invisible. Someone asks you for something small, a minor favor, a tiny inconvenience, something you'd feel petty for saying no to. And you say yes. That's not the problem. The problem is how you say yes. Because a manipulator isn't listening to your answer. They're watching your face. They're watching whether you hesitated, whether you looked uncomfortable but said yes anyway, whether you smiled when you clearly didn't want to. That's the compliance scan, and you just passed it. And the problem is, you don't even realize you're being evaluated. Think about the last time someone at work dumped their task on you. Not asked, dumped. And you took it. Maybe you even said, sure, no problem. While internally, you were already overwhelmed. That moment, that's not kindness. To them, that's a green light. This is how the fall guy situation starts. You're not chosen because you're incompetent. You're chosen because you've demonstrated that you will absorb discomfort without pushing back. You'll carry the weight and smile while doing it. They aren't looking for someone weak. They're looking for someone predictable. And right now, you are completely predictable. But compliance only gets you noticed. The real selection happens when you start talking, because that's when you reveal how easy you are to manage. This one is going to hit differently. You're in a conversation. Someone asks you something. Why you can't make it, why you said no, why you did something a certain way. And instead of just answering, you explain. You justify. You give context. You add reasons on top of reasons. You think you're being clear. You think you're being respectful. You're actually handing them a map. Every over-explanation tells a manipulator exactly what you feel guilty about, exactly where your insecurities live, exactly which buttons to press later. Your over-explanation isn't politeness. It's a blueprint of your insecurities. Here's a real scenario. Your boss asks why the report was late. A confident person says, it'll be on your desk by 3. That's it. But you? You explain that you were covering for a colleague, that you had a family thing, that you tried to reach out but the system was down, that you're usually never late, that this won't happen again. Stop. Look at what you just did. You told them you feel responsible for other people's failures. You told them family creates guilt for you. You told them your self-image is tied to being reliable. You told them you're afraid of their disapproval. That's not a conversation. That's an intake form. And once they have that map, they don't need to guess anymore. They just follow it. And the manipulator, whether it's your boss, a coworker, a partner, they're filing every single piece of that away. This is also how the helping you, then using it against you dynamic starts. They offer help. You over-explain why you need it, because you feel guilty accepting it, so you justify the need. Now they know your pressure points. And 6 months later, when they say, after everything I've done for you, they're not being emotional. They're being strategic. They kept receipts on your vulnerability. The moment you stop over-explaining is the moment you stop feeding the system. A manipulator doesn't break in. They wait for you to leave the door open. And every over-explanation, that's you propping the door open and apologizing for the draft. Up to this point, everything you've seen feels subtle. But this next part is where it becomes intentional. This is the deepest one, and it's the one that makes you self-gaslighting. You have a need, maybe you don't even call it that, to fix things, to help, to be the person who shows up. When someone is struggling, you lean in. When there's conflict, you try to resolve it. When someone is hurting, you absorb it. You tell yourself, this is empathy, and part of it is. But manipulators don't see empathy. They see access. Access to your time, your energy, your emotional bandwidth. And once they have access, they don't let go. Because here's what the savior complex actually does. It makes you responsible for other people's emotional states. And once you feel responsible for how someone else feels, you can be managed through that feeling. Think about family triangulation. Someone in your family is always in crisis, always needs you, and when you try to set a limit, suddenly you're the cold one, the selfish one, the one who changed. And you find yourself walking on eggshells, not because you did anything wrong, but because their instability has become your problem to solve. That's not love. That's resource extraction dressed up as a relationship. Or think about the coworker who always seems to need your help. Always just a little overwhelmed. Always grateful. Until the day you can't help. And suddenly there's a coldness, a distance, a subtle shift in how they talk about you to others. You weren't their colleague. You were their resource. The savior complex is dangerous because it doesn't feel like a vulnerability. It feels like a virtue. You feel like you're being a good person. And that feeling, that need to be seen as good, as helpful, as the one who came through, that's exactly what gets used against you. I feel like I'm overreacting. Sound familiar? That's the savior complex talking. Because if you were really being manipulated, you'd know, right? You'd feel it clearly. But you don't. Because you've been so focused on managing their reality that you've completely lost track of your own. Completely burnt out. Quietly having your value lowered. And still wondering if you're the problem. You're not the problem. But you are the pattern they rely on. This isn't just about spotting them anymore. It's about becoming a dead end for their tactics. Here is the psychological shift they fear most. Now that you see the markers, you have a choice. Keep sending the signal or change the frequency. Here's the exact shift that makes you invisible to them. Stop performing okayness, because that performance is exactly what they're reading. That's it. That's the core of it. Let me break down what that actually looks like in practice. On compliance. The next time someone makes a micro ask, something small, something you'd feel petty refusing, pause before you answer. Not dramatically, just a beat. Let there be a moment of silence where your answer used to be automatic. That pause alone disrupts the compliance scan. It signals that your yes is a decision, not a default. Manipulators need your compliance to be reflexive. The moment it becomes considered, you become harder to read. On over-explaining, practice the incomplete answer. Someone asks why you can't do something. It doesn't work for me right now. That's the whole sentence. No reasons, no context, no apology attached to the end. You will feel the urge to fill the silence. Don't. The silence is not a problem you need to solve. Let them sit in it. The person who needs no justification is the person who cannot be mapped. On the savior complex, so this one takes longer, but it starts with one question. Whose problem is this actually? Not rhetorically. Literally, before you step in, before you absorb, before you fix, ask yourself if this problem belongs to you. If it doesn't, your job is not to solve it. Your job is to be present without being responsible. There's a difference between caring about someone and being their emotional infrastructure. Here's what changes when you make these shifts. The predatory charm stops working on you, because predatory charm is calibrated to your compliance, your guilt, your need for approval. Change those inputs and the charm has nothing to attach to. The escalation loop breaks, because the small favors only escalate when each one is met with a yes. The moment you introduce friction, the loop has nowhere to go. And the most important thing, you stop being a project. Manipulators are not looking for a fight, they're looking for a return on investment. The moment you become unpredictable, the moment your responses require actual effort to manage, you become a bad investment. And they move on. The most dangerous person to a manipulator isn't angry. It's unimpressed. Not cold. Not hostile. Just unbothered. Grounded. Someone whose self-worth is not up for negotiation in this conversation. That's the frequency they can't scan. That's the signal they can't read. Stop asking why they did it. Start asking why you allowed it to continue. Because the answer to that question is where your actual power is. Knowing why they chose you is half the battle. But the second they move in, the second you're already in the dynamic, you need a different tool. You need to smoke them out. I've identified 5 specific questions that a manipulator physically cannot answer without revealing their hand. These aren't confrontational, they're not aggressive. They're calm, simple questions, and they create a kind of psychological pressure that exposes the entire game. If you think you're being tested right now, you don't have time to wait until it gets worse. Watch this next before the pattern locks in.